Welcome to the next section of this course, WLAN Infrastructure, Threats and Countermeasures. Here is a list of topics that will be covered in this section. In this section we will discuss the various vulnerabilities pertaining to wireless infrastructure, and how we can capitalize these vulnerabilities to penetrate wireless networks. We will start with a discussion on the default user accounts that ship with wireless APs and how these can be exploited. Then we are going to look at denial of service attacks in the context of wireless LANs. After this we are going to look at some attacks related to the WPS feature. Finally, we are going to look at evil twins and honeypots. Now coming to our first topic for this section, we are going to look at how we can exploit the default user accounts that are usually pre-configured on wireless APs. Ideally, each manufacturer should have forced the users of access points to go through a startup setup wizard, in which changing the default user credentials would be a mandatory step, but in reality this is rarely the case. Additionally, users seldom change the default usernames and passwords, assuming that accessing the web interface requires network connectivity to the AP. Particularly, home users assume that since their access points are physically located inside their homes, and they have configured their APs with secure authentication settings, it is highly unlikely that anyone can reach their AP's configuration page. However, this assumption is flawed due to various reasons. Firstly, if the user is using WEP or a weak passphrase for WPA and WPA2, an attacker can easily compromise the wireless network. Secondly, sometimes users enable remote management of their wireless AP or modem from the internet, and leave the default credentials unchanged. Attackers can then connect to the AP's management page, and even retrieve the wireless passphrases and keys, as we will see a little later. Also interestingly, there are huge lists of default credentials available on the internet, as shown on the screen. In order to reduce the exposure to these kinds of threats, we must ensure that we recommend sound and secure password policies for wireless infrastructure. This includes attributes like the length, complexity, and the age of user accounts on wireless devices. Additionally, if the access point supports the use of HTTPS, it should be enabled, and clear text HTTP management should be completely disabled. Also, a key hardening configuration is to restrict the medium from which the AP's management page can be accessed. Ideally, access from both the wireless network and external interface should be disabled. Only users connected to the AP physically, using wired connectivity, should be allowed access to the AP's configuration-related functions. Now let's try to find the default username and password for our lab AP and try to connect to it. As you see, our AP's username and password is listed on this web page. Now that we are connected to the AP, let's try to see the wireless security settings. In this case, the firmware running on the AP does not even bother to replace the wireless passphrase with hidden characters like asterisks. Even if it was hidden, once we have access to the AP, the passphrase value can easily be retrieved by viewing the HTML source code. This concludes our first topic. Next we are going to discuss wireless DOS attacks.